YouTube, how you doing? Murph here, bringing you another product review. Today's review is going to be on the brand new, just released Glorious Model I. This is the newest gaming mouse released by Glorious, and we're going to get into the technical specifications, the software, all of that. But as usual, we're going to start off by talking about the design and the build quality. Now, as far as the design is concerned, it's very similar to the Glorious Model D, which I have here. This is the D wireless specifically. There should be a wireless version of the I getting released some point this year, I would imagine. I would say probably about 6 months or so, if we're going off of Glorious's previous release cycles. But at some point we'll get a wireless version of the I, I'm sure. But as you can see, it's very similar in size and shape to the Model D, with the exception of obviously the side buttons, but you also get what I guess you would describe as a thumb rest on the side here. The other aspects of the mice are very similar. They both kind of slope off to the forward right just a bit in kind of a classic ergonomic shape. But really what makes the I special and different from the D are the addition of a few extra buttons. You do have 2 DPI buttons up top, and you do still have 2 side buttons here, but you also have an additional button on the bottom front, right where your thumb kind of rests, and you also have an extra button in the rear. And those 2 additional buttons are going to do a lot for functionality, especially if you play anything other than like first-person shooters. A lot of people who play MMOs and things like that really like to have extra buttons on the side of their mouse, and I wouldn't classify this as a true MMO mouse. But if you're somebody that plays a lot of different types of games, this is probably a mouse that is going to interest you. Now, these 2 extra buttons, the rear one here and the one on the bottom, are magnetic and removable. I will say though that I found it extremely difficult to remove these. I don't know if that's just this specific unit that I have in front of me, or if they're all like that. I actually had to take a little knife, a little blade, and pry these off because they are not super easy to remove at all, but they are removable. So you can play without them, or you can remove one and not the other. And this mouse actually comes with additional buttons that you can see here. So if you want to switch up the size and shape of those just a bit, you can do that and swap those out to something that's going to fit your hand size and play style a little bit better. So most people are not going to have an issue with the layout of this mouse. Now, continuing on with the design, you get kind of the traditional hexagonal cutouts on the rear top portion of the mouse, as well as most of the bottom. You also get PTFE glides on the bottom, which if you've never used a Glorious mouse before, these are very good. And you also get an extra one here kind of off to the side where the mouse juts out, just to give you a little bit more surface area, and the mouse really does glide very well. You still get all the RGB that you're used to from a Glorious mouse on the scroll wheel and both of the sides. It's very bright, and it is adjustable in the software, which we'll talk about in a moment. And you get their traditional logo on the right-hand side. That is one thing that's different. Usually it's on the left, but they can't really do that here, obviously, because of this slope and cutout and all of that. So it is on the right side of this mouse. This mouse is available in 2 colors. It's available in matte white, which is what you see here, and matte black. We don't have glossy models for this particular mouse. Maybe we'll see those at some point. They used to offer those on some of their older models, but you can select between those 2 colors, so you can choose what's best for your specific setup. And that's really it for the design. Now, as far as build quality is concerned, as usual from Glorious products, the build quality is superb. There is no bending, flexing, or creaking on any of the top or bottom plates or side panels. All of the buttons on this mouse, all 9 of them, feel very crisp and tactile, have really good feedback. The scroll wheel feels great, and you can feel those individual steps in between so you don't over scroll or anything like that. Even their cable, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best in the business. They refer to it as their Ascended cable, which is essentially their version of a paracord cable. It's very soft, flexible. It doesn't bunch up on you or get twisted up or snag on anything. Everything about this mouse is built very well and punches well above its weight in terms of price. All right, so we've covered design, we've covered build quality. Now let's talk about specifications. I'm gonna throw a graphic on the screen real quick. This is directly from Glorious's website, mainly because there's so many different measurements that they took because they actually measured at each specific point along this mouse. But basically the key takeaway here is that this mouse is 128 millimeters long. It's 62 millimeters wide, and I'm gonna take that middle number from the center of the mouse, mainly because the 74 millimeters is including that thumb rest, and it sits at 42 millimeters in height at its highest point. And of course, this mouse is pretty lightweight for its size. It comes in weighing 69 grams. This does use Gloria switches that are rated for about 80 million clicks, although I'm sure most people will get even beyond that. And it does use Gloria's BAMF sensor that we've seen in some of their other models. And it has a DPI range of 100 to 19,000, a max tracking speed of 400 IPS, and a max acceleration of 50 Gs. It does have a polling rate of 1000 Hertz, which is pretty much standard at this point. And it does have a minimum liftoff distance of 1 millimeter, and it does come with a 2-year limited warranty. All right, now let's talk about the software. After you download Glorious Core software and open it up, this is what you're going to be presented with. It's going to list any compatible Glorious products on this window right here. And in this case, we're going to select the Model I. And you can notice up here in the top left, you can select between 3 different profiles that you can save to this mouse. You can adjust the lighting here under the lighting tab. They have multiple different lighting modes. I prefer the Glorious mode. You can adjust the brightness. You can also go to the key binding tab and adjust any key binds that you want to adjust here. And what most of you are going to be concerned with is the performance tab. You can come here and adjust the DPI stages, which I'll get to in just a second, and you can adjust the liftoff distance. I would recommend for most of you leaving this at 1, and by default debounce is set at 10, although again for most people I would suggest probably something in the 0 to 4 range, but you can adjust this as you see fit. Polling rate by default should be 1000 Hertz, but you do want to double check that, make sure it's set on 1000, and you can save all of those settings. Now for the DPI stages, this is going to be in relation to the light on the bottom of the mouse. That's going to indicate what stage you're on, and you can change it just by tapping the top DPI buttons here. One goes up and one goes down. So for example, you see here, I'm going to set this on red, and that corresponds in this case to 1600 DPI, although you can come here and change not only the color that it corresponds to, but you can also come down here on the left and adjust what DPI setting that actually translates to. So everything is laid out here very well. I'm a big fan of Glorious Core software. It's very simple, easy to use, intuitive, and it has all the options that you need to control not just their gaming mice, but if you have a GMMK2 or a GMMK Pro or something like that, you can control everything you need to control from the software here. And that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to cover about this mouse. So I'll just end this video on my overall thoughts on this mouse and who maybe should consider buying it. Overall, I like the mouse. There's not really a lot of cons here. The biggest con for me, really, frankly, maybe the only con, is the difficulty in removing the side buttons. Fortunately, once you figure out which side buttons you want to use from that extra pack that they provide, I can't imagine too many people are going to be messing with these anyways on a consistent basis, but it was very difficult to get these off, especially if you have shorter nails like I do. Good luck. Just plan on grabbing a blade or anything that you can use to kind of pry these off. Now, I don't think there's going to be as big of a market for this as there is the Glorious Model O and D layouts, but I do think that there's going to be people interested in this mouse. And who would that be? I think anyone that plays maybe an MMORPG. Really, I shouldn't even say that. I should say anything other than like first and third person shooters. Fortnite players also may get use out of these extra side buttons here. If you're like a hardcore MMO player or something like that, you might even go for a different mouse altogether. Something with several different side buttons here. Some of those Razers that have like 6+ side buttons. But this is gonna be a good in-between if you just want an overall gaming mouse and you're comfortable with the ergonomic shape and you could use the extra side buttons. this is not a bad way to go at all, especially at this price point. This is going to be really hard to beat. It is wired only, but again, after a few months, I'm assuming they're going to release a wireless version just like they have with all of their other gaming mice. But if you like the ergonomic shape, you need the extra buttons, and being wired isn't a deal breaker, this is going to be a really good way to go. Again, especially at that $60 price point. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the review, found it useful. If you did, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Also, if you guys want to continue seeing other content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can be notified of when I post new content. And YouTube, we'll catch you later.